Well, folks, today we are going to be looking at the 2028 presidential election. We are going to be looking at the election map based on current polling, current data that we have right now, filling it out, determining what will the 2028 presidential matchup, what will the election look like, what will the map look like, what states will be in play. So we're going to start by filling out the map for the most likely Democrat states going into 2028. These are going to be safe Democrat states that have voted with Democrats for decades. We'll first start off on the the West Coast with Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii. All four of these states voted for Kamala Harris in 2024. They each, except for Oregon, and Washington voted for Kamala Harris by roughly 20 points. Hawaii voted for Kamala Harris by 23, California voted for Harris by 20, Oregon 14, and Washington 18 points, obviously down from the massive victory that Biden had in the states. Biden won Hawaii by almost 30 points, won California by almost 30 points, Oregon by 16, and Washington by 19. It is safe to say, as of right now in 2025, that these will be safe Democrat seats going into 2028. Adding on to that, we'll add Illinois, which obviously in the most recent election voted for Kamala Harris by roughly about 10 points, voted for Biden by 17 points. The last time it voted for a Republican in a presidential election was 1998. 1998, when George Herbert Walker Bush won his only term he would serve in the fall of 1988. Now moving on, we'll add to this column, we will add Maine's 1st Congressional District, we'll add New York, Vermont, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, the District of Columbia, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. These all will be Democrat strongholds going into 2028. Now we will look at the Republican strongholds. We will start off kind of in the Midwest and make our way around. Starting off with Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia. Obviously, Ohio used to be much more of a swing state. This was a state that helped deliver Donald Trump victory in 2016. Barack Obama won it twice by 4.5 points and by 3 points in 2012. Donald Trump won it by 8 points in 2016 and realigned this state to be a steady Republican state in presidential elections. Now we'll move on to Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, 1st Congressional District, and Nebraska at large, South Dakota, North Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Utah, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. These are the states that I would classify as of right now, Florida and Alaska, as Republican strongholds going into this election. Now, obviously, some notable places that we have not filled in yet. We're going to start off with Colorado, New Mexico. We're going to look at Virginia. And then, of course, the swing states of Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Arizona, Nevada. We're going to look at all of these that we have right now. Now, going into the 2028 presidential election, I believe it is very fair to say that Republicans will win in Nebraska's 1st Congressional District, and Democrats will most likely win by a margin of 5 to 10 percentage points in Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District. Looking at the demographics of the 2nd Congressional District, this has become a much more liberal, progressive area in Nebraska. This is the Omaha area. If you're looking on a map, clearly you can see Don Bacon, who's the incumbent representative, said he's not going to run for re-election in 2026. He says it has nothing to do with his re-election chances, simply because he wants to spend more time at home. But the reality is in this race, this is going to be a much tougher district for Republicans to win. On the Cook Partisan Voting Index, it's a D+3 as of right now. The median household income is about $80,000 right now. It is mostly urban. That's the reality of the 2nd Congressional District as of right now. You saw in the 2024 presidential election that Kamala Harris won the second Congressional District by roughly 5 percentage points. Biden won it by roughly 6 in 2020, and Trump had actually won it back in 2016 by about 2 percentage points in 2016. Now, moving on to the state of Colorado, I should have included this as a safe Democrat state. This will most likely be won by the Democrats. It's not going to be a hotly contested race. Republicans are not going to pour a lot of money into this election or into this race in 2028 in order to flip this to create some new pathway to 270. It's just not going to happen. Adding on to that, we'll say New Mexico. New Mexico, we're going to put into the likely Democrat column. Most likely, it will vote for the Democrat Party. It voted for Hillary Clinton by 8 points in 2016. It voted for Biden by 10 points in 2020 and voted for 6 points for Kamala Harris in 2024. Now, something that's fun to look at is the change since 2016. New Mexico shifted almost 2 points to the right since 2016 when Trump won. But if you're looking at since 24, New Mexico was one of the larger states that shifted. It was one of the larger shifts that we saw. Obviously, it's not the biggest. It's somewhere around the 20th highest state that shifted towards the Republican Party from 2020 to 2024. You can throw in there, look at Colorado. Only shifted 2.5 points. Look, from 2016, it actually moved 6 points to the left since 2016. If you want to know why Colorado is a safe Democrat seat going into 2028, look right here. The data is clear. The data is clear that even a state that was already pretty liberal to begin with is going to move further and further to the left. But for now, it is safe to say New Mexico will be considered a likely Democrat seat going into 2028. Now, add into that likely Democrat column, we are going to say Minnesota. Minnesota has been a competitive state, no doubt about this. This is a state that Donald Trump came within a couple points of winning in 2016. He came within 1.5 points. He did one campaign rally there in 2016, and he comes within 1.5 points of beating Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State. Fast forward to 2020, Biden expands the margin pretty handedly, notably because there is not a large presence of third parties. Third parties made up almost 6% of the vote in 2016. In 2020, it made up almost less than a percentage point in this election. Fast forward to 2020, Harris wins by roughly 4 percentage points. Trump is able to cut that margin down by roughly 3 percentage points from 2020 to 2024. It has always been a competitive race, but ultimately, this is a state that has not voted for a Republican since 1972. 1972, when Richard Nixon won in his landslide 521 electoral vote victory in 1972. It didn't vote, and it voted for Carter in 76. It voted against Reagan in 1980. It was the one state outside of the District of Columbia that voted for Walter Mondale in the state. Walter Mondale had 13 electoral votes. The District of Columbia and Minnesota. That's it. Fast forward, it has been a Democrat stronghold every year since then, except for 2016. But still, this is a state that is definitely trending to the left. But ultimately, we're going to put this as a likely seat as of right now. Now moving on to Virginia, where it's the same classification here, is this is a likely seat. This is a state that Donald Trump came pretty close in 2016, or I should say 2024, of winning this election. He came within 6 percentage points. Remember, back in 2016, Clinton won it by about 5 percentage points. Remember, Hillary Clinton's running mate, Tim Kaine, was a senator from Virginia at the time. Trump lost Virginia by 10 points in 2020, comes back to only lose it by about 5.5 percentage points in 2024. Now, I believe there's going to be a lot of hatred towards Donald Trump out of the state of Virginia, especially in these counties right up here. These counties that border with D.C. People live in Virginia. They commute into D.C. They are not happy with what Donald Trump is doing. They are not happy because he is trying to eliminate their livelihood, basically. He wants to eliminate a lot of federal jobs, which I think is a very good thing, but it is going to hurt the people who live in Virginia because ultimately those are the people who occupy those jobs. That's just a fact of life. I believe as of right now, 2018, Virginia will be a likely Democrat seat. Now that leaves us with basically Democrats will win the Maine at-large. No doubt about that. I forgot to add that in before. Look, Harris won it by 7 points in 2024. Biden won it by 9, I believe, in 2020. This is Maine at large. Obviously, it got close in 2016. Trump came within a couple points of winning, 3 points of winning. Ultimately, The first congressional district has become so liberal there. So liberal in the first congressional district. It's going to be hard to outweigh that even when Trump's winning the second congressional district by roughly 9 percentage points. But now for the likely Republicans, we're going to put Maine in there. I'm going to say this is going to be a lean Republican. Trump will probably win it between 5 to 10 percentage points, or I should say the Republican nominee, not Trump. Trump cannot run in 2028. The Republican nominee will most likely win it by about 5 to 10 percentage points in 2028. Now, this leaves us with basically, and I hate to say it, the same toss-up states that we were dealt in 2024. Some of the same toss-up states that we saw in 2020. Now, a little different than the toss-up states we saw in 2016. Obviously, the blue wall, this is what delivered the victory for Donald Trump in 2016. This is what put him in the White House. This is what denied him another White House bid in 2020. It's as simple as that. Also, in 2016, Donald Trump won in many places. He flipped Maine's second congressional district. He flipped Ohio. He flipped Iowa. He flipped Florida. Some major flips, obviously. Iowa, Ohio, Florida, and Maine's second congressional district have all become Republican strongholds, basically, at this point. That leaves us with the really 7 swing states. And that is Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And this is where it's going to come down to who is in the race. That really is what's going to matter. Because you can see this going a lot of different ways. My assumption as of right now is that J.D. Vance will be leading the Republican ticket. I think by all indicators as of right now, you can say J.D. Vance will be leading the ticket. Look at the polling data as of right now. You can clearly see in the opinion polling, J.D. Vance is getting roughly 1 out of every 2 Republican primary voters vote to be the nominee in 2028. He is, Donald Trump Jr. is not even a serious candidate. No one else is breaking double digits. Not Marco Rubio, not DeSantis, no one. No one else is breaking double digits. Basically, you have Rubio and Ron DeSantis. Those are the other 2. That's about it. And he's consistently held a lead, except when Donald Trump is polled. He has consistently held, except for this YouGov poll, has consistently polled ahead roughly around 35 to 50 percentage points in this election. It's a very different story on the Democrat side of the aisle. In Democrat polling, it is clear Democrats want someone else. They do not want Kamala Harris. Roughly 3 out of every 4 Democrat primary voters say they would not vote for Kamala Harris. They are choosing someone, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, Cory Booker, Gavin Newsom, Josh Shapiro, Tim Walz, Gretchen Whitmer, or someone else. Someone else. Look at this most recent poll. Shows Pete Buttigieg leading with 16%. Another Atlas Intel poll shows Buttigieg leading with 31%. Ultimately, Kamala Harris is still leading in most of these polls, but very much nowhere near 50%. Not even averaging 1 in 4 voters. She's barely averaging 1 in 5 voters that say they want her, that say they would vote for her, that say, this is the person I want to lead my party forward. And I really think if you're looking at a 2028 matchup, it is going to depend who is the Democrat nominee. I believe if Kamala Harris, I believe there are a few people who can actually win here. If I'm being 100% honest with you, I feel like there's very few people who can win nationwide. Like that's just a reality. Some of the few people who I do believe could win nationwide. I believe Gretchen Whitmer could win. I believe Josh Shapiro could win. I believe in a weird world that Jon Ossoff ran and he could win. I don't see AOC winning. I do not see Gavin Newsom winning. I don't see anyone else on here winning. I simply don't. Maybe Bashir. I think he has a serious problem when it comes to name recognition. I think the Democrat Party is going to have a hard time nominating him, especially because he's a more moderate Democrat. But no way. No chance that almost anyone on here wins. Not Tim Walz, not Pete Buttigieg. You want to talk about Buttigieg. Buttigieg, he will lose Georgia, North Carolina, probably Pennsylvania. And I believe structurally, based on there were 2 big trends in the 2024 presidential election, and that was wealthier individuals are moving further to the left, Hispanic and minority voters are moving further to the right. Specifically Hispanic, but minority voters in general have been moving to the right. We know that these three cities or states right here all have large populations of Hispanic and minority voters. They're all affected by the border crisis. I think if someone like a Buttigieg is on the ticket, I could see a place like New Mexico getting closer. But Arizona, I believe Arizona and Nevada would both have a structural advantage for the Republican Party going into 2028. Honestly, I believe Arizona in 2020 was a fluke. I truly believe that. You saw how it rebounded for Trump much more than any other swing state did. Same thing with Nevada. Arizona rebounded almost 6 percentage points from where it was in 2020. Rebounds. You're seeing other states move. Well, we can take a look right here compared to past elections. Oh, we have to get to this current election right here. But the reality is look, it moved 6 points. Wisconsin moved what? A point? A little more, a point and a half. Michigan moved what? 4.5 points. Pennsylvania moved what? 3 points. Arizona moved almost 6 points. Georgia only moved what, like 2 points, 2.5 points. North Carolina moved about 2 points. Not that much. I really believe that there would be a structural advantage for J.D. Vance, for a Republican in Nevada, in Arizona. I just truly believe that. And I think it could get closer in New Mexico if you have a bad candidate at the top of the ticket like Buttigieg. I see Vance winning right here. I'm undecided. I think it's very likely that if the map goes like this, I believe that that Wisconsin and Michigan will break the same way most of the swing states go, especially if you're looking at someone like a Buttigieg at the top of the ticket. Look, Georgia and North Carolina have two of the highest populations of African Americans. We know that Buttigieg struggles extremely bad with African Americans. Imagine what happens when there is depressed turnout in DeKalb County, Fulton County, Douglas County, Henry County, Newton, Rockdale County, Gwinnett County. How bad will that be for the Democrats if black support depresses 5%, 10%, because Buttigieg is at the top of the ticket? And right now he's roughly polling. In this same poll, this is what's insane. In this same poll right here that shows that Buttigieg is leading with 16%, this same Emerson College poll showed that Buttigieg had 0% support among African Americans. That is wild. Kamala Harris was leading it with 30% support. That is absolutely insane to me. I believe if you're looking up here and you're telling me that this is going to be someone like Buttigieg, this is the only way I think it could go. And I think you would see places like New York be closer, like California, like New Mexico will be closer. I think Republicans will win up the score in Florida. I think they'll run up the score in Texas. A lot of these states, this is where the big population of African Americans are. Based Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, coming into Virginia. Pennsylvania has a big population of African Americans. I could see this maybe even being something that goes to the Republicans by up to 5 percentage points. And I believe that if you're in that same scenario, I think I have a hard time seeing New Hampshire go into the Republicans, but I do believe, especially in the post-Trump world, that Republicans will be very competitive here, and that I could see it being a slight Republican. Republicans win it within a point. You put Newsom at the top of the ticket. I think that's a very interesting conversation to have. You put Newsom at the top of the ticket. I think Newsom would compete a lot better than someone like J.D. Vance. I think Newsom would win in New Hampshire, to be honest with you. I think he would win by a big margin in California, by a big margin in New York. I still think Nevada and Arizona would be a structural advantage for the Republican Party. But I think the biggest issue that Gavin Newsom will have is losing this idea that he is this West Coast elitist. He's this coastal elitist. He does not relate with our day-to-day problems, especially if you have J.D. Vance, someone who grew up in Ohio, in Appalachia, who grew up with the economic struggles and realities of growing up in the Rust Belt. He understands that, and I think he connects with voters a lot better. And I think there's some data out there that goes against that point. And what I mean by that is you look at J.D. Vance's election victory in Ohio in 2022. You saw Ohio go to Vance by roughly 6 percentage points. in a state that President Trump had just won not that long ago by 8 percentage points, won it in 2024 by 11. But ultimately, there was a good Democrat on that ticket. That is my, I would say, comeback to that. A lot of people point out, well, he didn't run as good. Yeah, you're right, he didn't. He didn't run as good. Neither did Bernie Moreno. Bernie Moreno won by 3.5 percentage points. Vance, in a cycle that turned out to not be great for Republicans, yes, did he win the same way that Governor Mike DeWine won in this state? No, he didn't. No, he didn't. DeWine won by 25 points, but DeWine is much more popular than J.D. Vance is in the state. And you can't, it's not even comparable to a certain extent. But still, Vance is winning by 6 points here. But I still believe that he has a lot better appeal in this Rust Belt region than someone like a J.D. Vance, than someone like a Gavin Newsom would have. If you put Newsom at the top of the ticket, I think he would seriously struggle. I think you'd see that struggle. I think Georgia would be close. I think North Carolina would stay in the Republican column. I think Georgia could be close. I could see Georgia going either way, especially with the much, much more progressive base that they have in the Atlanta metro area. They say that roughly like 7 of the out of the top 10 fastest growing black communities in America are in the Atlanta metro area. There's no doubt about that. But I still believe that Republicans could win in Georgia. I think Newsom will put up a better fight than someone like a Buttigieg would. I think Buttigieg would be bottom of the barrel, to be honest with you. Just kind of like around there with AOC. I could see Newsom win in Georgia barely. I mean, barely. And this could go either way. Honest to God, could go either way. But I still see Vance, winning in a place like Pennsylvania, barely squeaking by. You're not looking at the massive victory that we thought you were going to, you're not going to win by, 5, 6, 7 points in Pennsylvania. Could you win by a point or two? Absolutely. And then it doesn't matter where Wisconsin or Michigan goes. This goes to Republicans. That's a path to the presidency. That's the path to the presidency right there. Now, if you're looking at someone like AOC, I think there's a reality that AOC could be the nominee for the Democrats. When we talk about AOC being the nominee, I'm going to be honest with you. I think Democrats are going to get destroyed. Destroyed. I think you're going to see closer margins in places on the West Coast and in Hawaii. I think you're going to see closer margins all across the board. Maybe not in Vermont. Not in Vermont. I think Vermont would stay probably a 20-plus point victory for Democrats. But remember, voted for Biden by 35 points, voted for Harris by 31 points. It's going to be a huge margin either way. But I think it would be much, much closer. No chance. I think these become seriously structural advantages for Republicans. Republicans win in Georgia. They win in North Carolina. They win in Pennsylvania. Good luck, AOC, explaining why we need to eliminate fracking. Good luck explaining to people in the Rust Belt right here. The 3 states that delivered Donald Trump a victory in 2016 and 2024, and Biden a victory in 2020. Explain to them why they can't go to work anymore because we need to eliminate fracking. I could honestly see all of these shifting very hard to the Republican Party if AOC is at the top of the ticket. But where do I see Republicans losing? If I'm being 100% honest with you, I think someone like a Josh Shapiro. I think a Josh Shapiro or a Gretchen Whitmer would compete very well. Remember, these are 2 Democrats who competed very well in swing states. Now, yes, could you say 22 for Josh Shapiro was kind of a fluke? You had Doug Mastriano, a horrible gubernatorial candidate in 2022. But look, this is a swing state that swings a couple points each way, 1 or 2 points each way, and Shapiro wins it by 15. You look at Michigan. Yes, did they have a bad Republican candidate nominated? Absolutely they did. But Whitmer's winning in a state that just voted for Biden, voted for Trump by 1.5 points, votes for Biden by almost 3 points, voted for Trump by 1/4 of a point. You see Whitmer winning by 10 percentage points. Both of them, I think, could be very strong in the Midwest. Very strong in the Midwest. I think Gretchen Whitmer is more likely to have the nominee than Josh Shapiro. I think ultimately Democrats are going to have a hard time nominating a Jewish man if we're just being honest. If I'm being honest, that's just my personal opinion. But I think if Whitmer's at the top of the ticket, I definitely see Michigan going 1 to 5 points for Gretchen Whitmer. I could even see Georgia becoming pretty competitive. Again, You get within, maybe she wins by a point, maybe she wins by 2 points. I could even see Whitmer winning in Pennsylvania. Imagine Republicans after 4 years. Maybe America is tired of Donald Trump. Maybe they are tired of his policies. I feel like, Donald Trump is doing a lot of good things, but this is the reality. The pendulum swings. The pendulum swings back and forth. I think that Democrats could win. I still think Republicans structural advantage Nevada and Arizona. North Carolina, I still think goes for the Republican Party. But I could see with Whitmer at the top of the ticket, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Georgia going for them. Same thing with Shapiro. I think Shapiro would win Pennsylvania by a bigger margin too. I think he'd win Michigan. I think he could win Wisconsin. Georgia, I think if Shapiro's at the top of the ticket, I think this is back in the Republican column. But still, if this is Shapiro, that gets you to 270. That's all you need in this election here. But so that's going to wrap things up for today, folks. This is my 2028 election map prediction, what things will look like in 2028 based on the data that we have right now. So as always, drop down below. Let me know your thoughts down below. Don't forget to like the video, hit that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And folks, we will catch you next time.